Lie down on your back. Take your attention to that part of your self that you call the lower abdomen, below the navel, above the pubic bone. Notice any sensations that appear to you in that place. In Japanese, this place has a particular name. It's called the tanden. T-A-N-D-E-N, tanden. So you're sensing, you're paying attention to the sensations that appear in the tanden. And you're not interested in anything else. That is your sole place of interest. Do not let anything else distract your attention from the sensations that can be felt there. Should you experience your attention wandering, becoming fuzzy, crisp up, redirect your attention to that place, to the tanden. Notice how that place moves as you breathe in and as you breathe out. That many of the sensations that can be experienced there are somehow linked to the movements associated with breathing. Now, you know you don't have any lungs down in the abdomen, but you do know that the abdomen can become affected through the act of breathing. And that's all you're interested in right now, the sensations of the movement of the tanden associated with your breathing. We're going to do a series of movements, and your intention throughout every movement you're invited to explore is to not be distracted away from the sensations that you experience in the tanden. Do not be distracted. Do everything within your mental power not to be taken away from those sensations, and move in a way that also does not take you away from those sensations. Bend your legs, stand your feet, Hold your right knee with your right hand. Slip your left hand behind your head. Rest the back of your head in your hand. Direct your elbow to your knee and your knee to your elbow. Do that many times. And the movements are actually not important. What is important is that you remain focused on the tenden and the sensations that appear there. And should you move in a way that somehow interferes with that process, think again. Do nothing that interferes with your ability to sense the tanden. Stop. Return to simply lying on the floor. So there's your first priority. Your first number one priority is to always be focused on the sensations associated with the movement of the tanden. Second priority, could you please establish for yourself the primary image, the one that you were just putting together at the back of the room there. Establish the central line from the coccyx through to the head in that direction. Establish the line of the limbs, the right leg from the hip joint to the foot, the left leg from the hip joint to the foot, the right arm from the shoulder blade to the hand, the left arm from the shoulder blade to the hand. Establish the two widths, the widths from the right hip joint across to the left hip joint, and the width from the tip of the right shoulder blade to the tip of the left shoulder blade. So now you have 5 lines, 2 widths. First priority, can you maintain your focus on the movements of the tanden and still have in your awareness a sense of the primary image? And should the primary image interfere or distract you from being attentive to your tanden, then the second priority is momentarily dispensed with until you re-establish the first priority. Notice how much of the primary image can you keep in mind and still be focused on the movements of the tanden. So this is kind of like a layering of focuses, or foci. Attending to the movements of the tanden and attending to the primary image as a whole, bend your legs, stand your feet, and if you lose the primary image, if you lose the sensation of the tanden, Acknowledge that and re-establish. The movements are not important. Your focus is important. Take hold of your left knee with your left hand. Slip your right hand behind your head. And bring the elbow and the knee towards each other and then away, and do that many times. And notice, when does the primary image disappear? And if it's too hard to hold, let it go and go to your first priority, sensing the movements of the tanden. And if the movements of the tanden disappear, then change how you're moving yourself until that movement constantly remains in your focus. That you never lose sense of it. That's enough. Stop. Rest on your back completely. So we have two foci for your awareness. Number one priority, tanden, movements of the tanden. Number two priority, the image of the 5 lines, or the primary image, holding that in your awareness. And then the third priority is this one. Bring your attention to the expression on your face, whatever that happens to be at this moment. And think to yourself, is there something in the last few days that you found amusing, funny, not necessarily in this training room, but anywhere, that started to make you smile? And could you please begin to vividly recall what that felt like? The more vividly you recall it, perhaps the expression on your face will start to change. Notice if there's a change in the shape of the mouth at the corners. Notice if there's a change around the muscles of the eyes. What is this feeling that appears in the musculature of the face when we laugh, when we smile, when we're in a state that's pleasant for us? That is your third priority. First priority, attention to the tanden. Second priority, attention to the primary image. Third priority, this feeling, this sense of what happens in your face when you're in a good humor. Not laughing, but ready to laugh, ready to be of good cheer. Remember, first priority is tanden. Bend both of your legs, stand your feet. If you lose number 3 priority, the expression on the face, stop a moment. Reconsider what you've just done. Is there a way of doing that movement that you just did that keeps the third priority alive? slip the hands behind the head. And if you've lost the second priority, what is it that you do with yourself to be able to still have the 5 lines in mind? Start to bring the elbows to the knees and the knees towards the elbows. And should this movement distract you from your number 1 priority, sensing the tanden, then change the way you mobilize yourself. And if it means doing nothing, then you do nothing. Until you're ready to try it out again and see what happens next time. So your attention is constantly roaming between these 3 priorities in your awareness, and they do have a sequence. Number 1 is always the tanden. Number 2, always the primary image. Number 3, always the attitude of being in good humor and the feeling in your face that's associated with that. And if you need to give up the attitude to maintain number 1 priority, that's what you do. If you need to give up the second attitude, the primary image, to maintain the tanden, that's what you do. And this way of working, for some of you, is very, very rewarding, and for others is not. And thankfully, within the repertoire of Feldenkrais lessons, there are some lessons that you never have to revisit ever again. And you'll still learn the method. Stop, lengthen out your limbs. Notice your facial posture. Yes, faces can have a posture. Is what you feel in your face an expression of good humor? Notice the 5 lines, the primary image. How much of that image can you hold in mind at one time without losing your awareness of the posture of your face and without losing your awareness of the tanden? Without losing your attention on the tanden, make a pathway to standing. Should you lose your attention, stop, refocus, continue. Yeah. make your way to a chair and sit in the chair. If you decide to sit on a stool, you'll need some wall to lean against. Sit in a way that the soles of your feet are squarely on the floor and your shoulders are leaning against the backrest. Notice I said your shoulders. I didn't say your middle back or lower back. I said your shoulders. Yeah, that's it. And in this position, could you please put your hands on the tanden, on the hara, down below, and do something very particular. Point the fingertips inwards towards the back of the pelvis, and then slightly upwards in the direction of your solar plexus. So inwards and upwards, and then remove the pressure. Just do that several times. Inwards and a slight curl upwards. Inwards and a slight curl upwards. Pay attention to the pathway of that movement. It's a curved, arced path. It's not just a direct push backwards. Sorry? Somewhere between your navel and your pubic bone, about 3 fingers down. Now, the next time that you introduce your fingers in and you're pushing backwards and slightly upwards, could you push the fingers in the same pathway that they went in? So down and forward. Fingers push in and upwards. Abdomen pushes the fingers down and forwards. As you push the fingers down and forwards, notice what happens with your pelvis. Use that pushing out of the tanden, the hara, to drive the pelvis to roll in the direction of your feet. And what you might experience is when that happens, your contact with the back of the seat increases. Can you feel that there's a slight push into the back of the seat? Great. Let that be. Pause for a little while. Rest in your chair as you wish. Return to that same sitting posture. If you want to call it slumped, you can call it slumped. It's certainly not what you'd call upright sitting. Ever so slightly, lighten your left foot from the floor. And then return the full weight of the foot and the left leg to the floor. And repeat the same process with the right leg. Ever so slightly, lighten the contact that your right foot makes with the floor. and then return it. Alternate, left, right, left, right, left, right. And pay attention to how the muscles start to get involved as you start to levitate your leg from the ground. My recommendation to you is this, that as you start to levitate a leg from the ground, do not intentionally push the back of the chair. But you might experience your shoulder blades, your upper back, pushing into the chair. But it's not because you're doing it deliberately. Now both feet. Just think of lightening both feet ever so slightly from the ground. And could you do it so that that little lightening, the thickness of a sheet of paper, has about 15 moments in it? That you could divide that little lift into 15 separate moments. Now I'm here, 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 now I'm here. And the feet haven't even lifted yet. And then repeat that as you lower the feet to the floor. And you'll notice how your lightening of the legs starts to affect your trunk. Especially for those of you who have your eyes open and you see me going through the motions as I'm trying to get the descriptions. Good. Let that be. Pause for a little while. So a little survey. How many of you felt that when you started to lift your feet, you felt your trunk, or at least the lower half of yourself, being pulled forward and the upper half arching back? How many of you felt that? No? Yeah, good. Arch. Arch. Not ouch. No, okay. All right. Return to that same sitting position. And you're kind of getting a sense of what's happening here. So you make the adjustments that you feel you need to make in the terms of how far your legs are apart, where you have your feet, how close your pelvis is to the edge of the chair. You make those adjustments. And now repeat what you just did with your legs, but every time you lighten your legs from the floor, could you start to bring the arms forward, but no higher than your shoulders? And please be very, very attentive to what you do in your neck to levitate your arms forwards. Is it necessary to tense the neck to lift your arms? Is it necessary? And if it is necessary, how much? How much? Could you leave your head free to scan a horizon? Oh, okay. So here we have this idea of the horizon. There's a horizon out there. Can you have your eyes and your nose and the plane of your face on the horizon? And as you lift, as you lighten the legs and as you levitate the arms, could the neck just be free so that you can scan the horizon? No higher than the shoulders. Oh, yeah, you could do that if you want. See what happens. Yep. Now, since you're scanning the horizon, as you do that movement, look around yourself and how many faces around this room do you really see are actually on the horizon? Check out your colleagues. Who would you walk over to and show them something? Who would you walk over to? Might it be that you walk over to yourself? Are you sure that your face is on the horizon and not being pulled upwards, not being pulled downwards, but just on the horizon? Great. Let that be. Pause for a little while. I'm not sure. One's probably a larger concept than the other one. Tanden just means abdomen. Sakai tanden means a certain distance below the abdomen. And hara, where's Ruth? Hara seems like a more encompassing concept than both. It has other connotations, but it still identifies this area. So in Zen meditation practice, this notion of breathing with the hara is pretty central. I came across a nice video clip called Hacking the Hara, presented by a Zen Buddhist monk who's a neurophysiology researcher. Yeah. Come back, sit in the chair, and let's stitch these elements together. So you have the fingers coming in and that feeling of pushing out the abdomen. You have the lightening of the feet from the floor. You have the arms drifting forwards, and then you have the plane of the face and the eyes always staying upright out onto the horizon. Could you put those things together? Very good. And go moonwalking. That's what it looked like, a little moonwalk. Yeah, that's good. And the target is just is coming upright, actually coming from sitting on the back of the seat to bringing yourself upright. That's the target. But don't let the arrow fly until it just flies by itself. Yeah, that's nice. So you keep exploring that. Ruth was talking about Aikido, but one of the first books I ever read on the martial arts when I was 17 years old was this book about Zen archery by, I can't remember the guy's name, but and he describes this whole process of Zen and the hara and all of this really formalized in shooting arrows at a target. And there's ritual and it's delicious. It's a wonderful thing to look at. But the central point is you don't shoot the arrow at the target. The arrow finds its way to the target. And, you know, Sometimes, sometimes, a lot of the times, in awareness through movement, we have the same idea. You're not trying to cobble the movements together with fierce, single-pointed, attitude. You're just letting them come together, and you're holding it in the back of your mind. That's what you're doing now. Just like you did this morning with Ruth, when someone was holding you from behind, and she said, no, just focus on walking. Don't focus on trying to pull the person. So just focus on coordinating these things. The abdomen pushing outwards, the legs lightening, the arms lifting forwards, and the stalk of the neck and the head being quite free. And if you need to change the amount of incline that you have on the chair, do it. Just like when Ruth said to you, partner who's doing the pulling or resisting, if you pull too hard, it just becomes not possible to practice appropriately. So here, if you've got the incline that's too big, you'll have to have a lot of constancy in your practice to find the coordination. That means dedication over a long period of time. But if you just have the right amount of incline and you start to do that, you'll find yourself just simply drifting forward. And I'm using that word deliberately. You'll find yourself drifting up to vertical sitting. Yeah, free the neck. Now, stop a moment. And for a brief moment in time, just let's look at this from a kinesiological perspective, from what's going on with the body. So first thing that's going on, and I'll use this as a representation of the central line. You have a central line here, right? And there you are, sitting like this. Well, something has to pull to move this central line forwards. Has to. So something has to pull from this direction to move that forwards. That something is your psoas muscle. Huge, huge, huge muscles. I've said it before, I'll say it again, sorry all your vegetarians. It's the filet mignon. It is nice and fat and long. It's huge. And when that muscle contracts, what it will do is it'll pull on everything it attaches to. Remember this morning when you were lifting your arm? How many of you felt that your chest rolled towards your arm and your arm lifted from the floor? Same thing. As you lighten your legs, the psoas muscle and the hip flexors here contract. They will pull your legs this way, but at the same time, they'll pull your pelvis and they'll pull your spine that way. Yep. If you leave your trunk like too loose, then what you get is bending. Your trunk will just buckle. So if I'm leaning back here and I leave this all loose and just let this all hang out, then what you get is too much compression back here. So somehow you have to make this rubbery thing. I lost it. You have to make it stiffer. You have to make something that is malleable stiff. How do you do that? You ask Jenny to quickly run to the back of the room and give you something. So this is stiffer, right? This is a stiffer substance than that. If I pull on this now from here, it doesn't buckle. intra-abdominal pressure created by the tensioning in here. The wrong way to do the 5 winds kata is you're sitting back here and you go, yeah, that's certainly creating a tensioning in here. You're stiffening yourself, but that's not the proper form. That's not the form of the kata. The kata, like Ruth again said this morning, but not about the kata, is that when you do this, the spine stays long. So as soon as you go here and you go, hup, spine stays long. But you've still got tension in the whole abdominal region, and then you've got hydraulic pressure in there keeping it. And all the breathing stuff you're doing means you don't have to go, you just breathe. Another thing that Ruth did today, yeah? Can you keep this out and just breathe? Yeah. One more. When you elevate your arms, you take the weight of the arms forward, which means it helps you to shift your center of gravity forward. It changes the balances in the body. And what you'll find is you no longer have to push against the back of the chair, but the arms just take you in that direction, like a little teeter-totter. So there's some of the aspects of the 5 winds kata that, of course, the people practicing it didn't have a kinesiological understanding of, but they had an energetic understanding of it, or an understanding of it from looking at everyday objects and making some analogy to everyday objects. Oh, it's like the water moves you from within. It's like the breath moves you, whatever. And it's a bit mystical. But here we are doing the kata in a form, and we're demystifying a little bit. So having heard what I just said, go back and practice. See if that, for some of you, that kinesiological understanding helps you to move forward a little bit. And that wasn't a deliberate quip. But some of you, because of your body proportions, might need to take your heels further away from the chair. That's also got to do with weights and counterweights, levers. And naturally, what I have done to all of you, or most of you, I think, is to distract you from your focus, which is tanden. So do nothing that takes you away from there. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. You have another chance to practice. You live another day. Bless you. That's it. Nice. It has a feeling of drifting. I've spent many wasteful hours kneeling in a, what do you call it, spa bath. Lifting the arms, putting them down, expanding the abdomen, putting it down. And the movements that that happen are amazing. And it feels just like, it feels like nothing. That's why when Feldenkrais talks about Koizumi doing this kata, his description of the movement is entirely qualitative. He says it looks like the wind picks him up and just brings him up to standing. as if the wind just swept him up and picked him up, put him up to standing. What Koizumi's inside experience is, we'll never know. But that's what it looked like from the outside. Yeah, that's almost there. Timing. Timing, yeah? Tanden, 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 tanden. Yeah. See, a lot of hip joint flexion. Oh, okay. Kevin, look up. So you have two pivot points here. There's two different pivot points. One for the trunk, one for the hip joints. The pivot point for your trunk is your sit bones. Two sit bones. This is what you're pivoting on here. The pivot point for your hip joints, they're further away from the chair. If you move your hip joints in such a way that the sit bones get taken backwards, you're working against yourself. So there has to be a freedom in the hip joints and an organization of the trunks where you get the hip flexion and the pelvic movement around the sitting bones. So could you appreciate how many lessons you need to do to free up the hips, free up the neck, free up the chest, get the tanden working? Oh, probably about 50 or 60 lessons. That's how long a series it would take to get everything just working nice. Now, you are allowed to go home once you can come up to sitting and with that feeling of the wind just carrying you there. When you can accomplish that, you can go home. Jenny's laughing. No, let him go home. There we go. Maybe, maybe not. Look at that. That was nice. Sorry, I pointed you out. What? Okay. Nice. Yeah. Good. So there, in this movement, in this little movement, is kind of like a tying up of the various elements that we've been doing through these 3 weeks. The breathing, the 5 winds kata, all the lessons that Ruth has taught, they all come together in this. Okay, I think that's enough. What do you think? Yes, there's one yes. Good, then it's enough. I'd like to thank Ruth. Who's just shared some great stuff, I think, with you and the lessons she's taught, and Jenny. And I hope you have a great 2 months between the segment, and I'd like to thank you for your, wow, just the way you work with each other is just fantastic. Yeah, it's been a dream watching you work for the last 3 weeks. That keep it going. Is that enough? Yeah. Okay. Be well. See you next time. Oh, yeah. One more announcement that's actually of great benefit to you all. Here, no. Use this. Use this.